I think people don't talk about brain injuries because it's just too hard to go back and talk about. If I would have just known, if I would have just heard someone talk about brain injuries, I would have not had to go down one of the hardest roads a human could go down. If I would have just had one doctor tell everyone, oh, he has a brain injury, everyone would have been like, oh, let's help him. But because that one doctor said I had depression, it was like I got zero help. Neuro pain is so much different than like twisting your ankle. It's like this undescribable burning sensation. I remember my legs didn't work. I would crawl to my van and drive down to the park and crawl to this tree and sit. And I remember just like being like, how do I make it? Like, no one's giving me answers. Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm crawling everywhere. Like, what is wrong with me? No one will tell me. And then I found the Chinese medicine doctor, and he's like, instantly, he's like, you have a brain injury. When they scanned my brain, they said, your brain is like sleep. It's like you're awake sleeping. This is like my chapter where like, okay, Sterling, what are you actually made of? You know, like you can go kill yourself or you can fight to live.
If you've ever personally experienced, or maybe someone close to you has experienced an injury or an illness that nobody could figure out, even something where your friends and family started thinking you were faking it or imagining it. Well, this is the story of Sterling Spencer, a professional surfer who ended up getting a brain injury. Nobody could figure it out. It was misdiagnosed. He couldn't get out of bed. Eventually, he lost his ability to walk. His family fell apart. Some of his friends didn't believe him. Well, lo and behold, they finally figured it out. All of the things that he's been doing and has done to bring him back up to better health, how his life is going now, how he's working on forgiveness, not only of the people in his life, but even some of the stuff that he's gone through. And it's an amazing story. And welcome to the Gabby Reece Show. Let's go. Hi, Sterling. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's fun seeing Laird.
I know. I was like, hey, you got to do me a favor. You have to come over here and see Sterling. Because, I don't know if you know this, but Laird is not online.
Right.
And so when you're having all that fun, I have to actually go out of my way and show it to him.
We've been doing Laird stuff for maybe 20 years.
Have you?
Yes, for sure. Like since 2002. I don't think he ever sees it because he's just either mowing the lawn or...
Yeah. It's hard to make fun of somebody when they're not paying attention to that they're being made fun of.
Well, he just crushes it so hard. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about you, Sterling. So, Sterling, it's interesting digging into your story. Sometimes you feel like there's these... I don't want to say obvious cliches about people who are funny, but it's clearly this idea of using humor, not only to enjoy life, but maybe to manage things.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so, your full name is Sterling Spencer, and you actually, let's start actually with your pops, because I feel like the influence of your dad is, how they say about everybody in the family takes their role, their sort of position in the elevator.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like that person over there is like the warrior serious, and then this person over here is that. So I'm going to be the funny person over here. Like everybody takes their position. Maybe just share a little bit about what it was like growing up in Florida with your dad and sort of what his background is.
Yeah, well, my dad was kind of like the Laird of the Gulf Coast. He was a famous professional surfer. He was the first professional surfer from the Gulf Coast. And he had surf shops called Interlake Surf Shops, and he kind of made himself through surfing. So, I'm the youngest of my family. I have an older brother. He's Yancey the Fourth, and my sister Abigail. And so yeah, I'm the youngest of the tribe. So he was, his life was really hard. So to get us to where we were, it took a lot of effort, So when I was a kid, I didn't understand why things were so serious. Like I didn't know being a legend surfer was so serious.
Right.
So I kind of being the youngest, it's really easy to observe everyone. You know, you're just kind of when you're the youngest, you're just kind of like, oh, this is kind of funny.
Did your brother take it on the chin as the oldest? Like, was he really sort of feeling like I'm supposed to be like my dad more than you? You think he
Yeah,
took
for
the hit?
sure. Yeah, his his road seemed a little harder compared to me because he's Yancey Jr. to my
Yeah.
dad, and my brother grew up in the '80s, and I feel like surfing was way more popular then. Like it was everything,
Yeah.
and everyone was expecting him to be just like my dad. And I think he had a really hard time handling that pressure because my brother's kind of similar to me. Just he's a really funny guy, and he wasn't like world champ kind of genetics mentality, you know. And our dad was. Our dad was like, it always felt like he was playing mind games with us to become like world champions.
Mm-hmm.
Like he, it was like he was like a master Miyagi with like getting us to become these pro servers that he wanted.
Yeah. It's interesting as a parent, we have 3 daughters, and I secretly was always relieved we never had a son,
Yeah,
because I thought it might be challenging to be Laird's son. And I don't think girls get measured the same against their mothers. It's like maybe if your mother's this radical beauty queen or something, but
yeah,
typically it's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, are you going to be like your dad? But it's interesting because I think sometimes what makes you this champion, if you're lucky, you don't actually pass it on to your kids. Like somehow your
yeah,
kids become more emotionally well adjusted, and they're like,
yeah.
"Hey, what's the big deal?" But you
Right.
but you did fall in love with surfing, and you did surf, and you were going to Hawaii.
Yeah,
So maybe what role was surfing for you then? Because you defined it then for yourself.
yeah. Well, I was actually I was super athletic, and contests actually came pretty natural to me. And I won East Coast Championships 4 times, and won a national title, and got sponsored by Billabong. And I was on the path, but it didn't really feel. It felt like this is what I had to do. Like I had no other option. So I was just I had a lot of energy. So I was like, okay, this is fine. Like this isn't that bad. Like traveling and surfing and stuff. And but as I started getting older, you know, you just start realizing you're not really the same. When I started doing the tour and stuff, that's when I like being around Andy Irons and Kelly Slater. That's when I realized like, whoa, like these guys are animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when it's funny. My first CT I ever surfed was kind of like, it was really confusing because after I was like, yeah, this isn't what I want to do. And I worked my whole life to get there. So it was a really confusing time for me. Like, I'm like, why am I not as happy as these people doing this? I felt like something was wrong with me.
Mhm. Is that, I mean, I know you're naturally kind of playful and funny, and kind of parallel path to that was the internet. And I feel like you're definitely one of the first surfers to really start having fun with that and doing skits. So was that your reaction to, okay, I'm going to be in surfing, but maybe I'm going to be a different character in surfing, not just because those competitors, people don't realize it's like Laird. Laird is not like Kelly Slater. Kelly Slater is a killer and a
Yeah, yeah,
competitor. And
yeah.
you can see it even the difference of Andy Irons and Brucey Irons. Like Andy was a
Oh, yeah.
competitor, Brucey is a widely talented surfer. And these are,
Mm.
different things. I don't even think Laird cared much about competing either.
Yeah,
And people don't realize, like, if you have competitors in surfing, and then you have people that sort of are great surfers. And sometimes one might have both, but sometimes in the case of like you or someone like Laird, it's like you're good surfers. Maybe you're not competitive surfers. So when did you get the idea or even have the, kind of wherewithal to start having some fun on camera?
Well, I was always filming funny stuff growing up. I had my own cameras and laptops, and I would make my own funny little films. And but I never showed them to anybody. And when I got onto Billabong, we did our first big like film, and they would film behind the scenes stuff, and I realized like my personality like is better than my surfing. And then I realized, I'm like, man, like, Andy was like, I want this guy on the trips, and like Taj, and all of a sudden I became kind of like, we want this guy on the trip because he makes it funnier, like we're so bored all the time. Like it's nice having like someone not taking things so seriously. And I grew up traveling so much with my dad because, my dad, we went to Hawaii a lot when I was a kid because him and Mark Fu were close. Mm-hmm. If you remember Mark Fu.
Of course. And for people listening, Mark Fu actually passed away up at Mavericks. And I feel like it's almost one of the, is it the first time somebody died at Mavericks, right? He took a red eye. Yeah. Wasn't that it? He took a red eye, landed, and they went straight out.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Yeah. So I think so you're talking about a great surfer. And so your dad was close to him and would go there for, a winter month or something. And
that's what got us to Hawaii. And me growing up there a lot of my life. Mark Fu was actually from Delaware, and he went down to Pensacola with my dad, and he like learned to surf good. And then when he graduated high school, him and my dad went out to Hawaii, and then Mark just like took off. It was like crazy. He was so good at life.
It's unusual.
Yeah. But everyone thinks Mark Fu is like Hawaiian Japanese guy. And I was
he's a Delaware guy.
He's like my Delaware uncle.
I always found it interesting, people who are surfers from Florida and then they go to Hawaii, because it is, I mean, I know Slater was going very, very young, as a young kid. What do you think that was like for your pops? Because maybe you grew up with it, but your dad maybe came to it later. What do you think that was like to transition as a surfer who rode, kind of one type of wave, and then now all of a sudden you go to Hawaii and it's really different?
It felt like for him, Hawaii made surfing real for us. Like that was the Mecca. And being from the Gulf, you just, we're not used to big waves. So when we get to Hawaii, it's pretty magical for us. Like, or maybe some people are scared it goes the other direction. But like for us, it made me feel like I was born in 86, which was the year North Shore was filmed. So I'm like a North Shore baby. It feels like, I watched Laird when I was a kid as a Lance Burkhart and stuff. And like that was like the way I grew up. Like I watched North Shore every day, and I was like, I just want to like go be in Hawaii, and I want to be a pro surfer. And to me, that was the most magical era, of surfing.
Yeah. So it was definitely the business, where there was some real money there too. So it was interesting. Is it scary? Do you think it's scary to sort of adjust to the different speed and size of these waves and the lineups, because they're, a little bit more radical and more aggressive?
Yeah, I feel like it takes a Gulf surfer. I had my dad guiding me, and he was always like, it takes like 3 months to just get used to being there. So we would always go in steps. He's like, we're going to start at VLAN, and then maybe Sunset Point, and and then pie, maybe like gums. So he kind of taught me how to like, it's a long game with Hawaii. Like you just have to work your way up. Don't try to like go straight to Waimea your first day, or you'll probably be scared.
It's a good idea. So as a young adult, are you viewing yourself as a professional surfer, or kind of this kind of personality that also is good at surfing? Like, how are you now as a professional, in your late 20s, early 30s? How are you kind of looking at what you're doing?
I always felt like I had too many talents. And it kind of like, I was like, maybe if I was just good at surfing, like maybe I would have surfed more or something. I always felt like I had growing up in the Gulf, you're so bored. So I learned like my mother was a musician, so I learned every instrument. It's like the surf is never up, so I just learned as much as possible. And I think it kind of hindered my pro surfing career, but it really was good for like now, like being good at the internet is a tool now, like just naturally picked all that stuff up because I had so much time on my hands and we didn't have cell phones then.
Yeah, I think people don't realize, Laird always reminds me of how patient he is. He goes, how patient surfers are. We're waiting. People they don't think about it. They don't think, because in basketball or football, you can be like, okay, we're going to play, Sunday at noon and the game's there. You guys are constantly waiting for, all of the conditions to show up, and is it the season and things like that. So how is your physical fitness practice? You see a lot of different athletes and especially surfers. Did you have a relationship with training and eating a certain way, or are you just kind of doing it, at that time? Were you
Yeah,
already a vegetarian? Like what was your practice like as far as being an athlete?
I definitely caught on to it early. I started getting anxiety around like 18. And I think it was just so much pressure constantly with the contests and stuff. And I was just eating like crap, like Snickers and Gatorades. And I learned if I didn't eat sugar, I didn't have anxiety. So that was kind of a huge like, whoa, like what, I need to start paying attention to my diet, because I didn't know what anxiety was when I was a kid. So it was a really strange, of my journey, because like when you don't know what anxiety is, you're just like, oh, do I have like cancer? Your mind will go into a million directions. So I my parents took me to like some doctors and they gave me like Xanax and stuff. And that's when I learned, like, I stopped trusting doctors because I realized all I needed was to stop eating sugar and do like a little yoga.
Yeah. You needed based on your personality, you need to down regulate your system.
Yeah, I was crushing it too hard. Like, you can't surf and be a teenager partying, and like if you're just always going and going, if you don't get that zen in your life, like you won't be balanced. So yeah, my first experience with like doctors was pretty negative. I was like, when they gave me the drugs and stuff, it made me like not funny anymore. I
Yeah.
was like, what is this stuff? Like, I felt like a pretty magical person my whole life. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, this stuff kind of sucks.
Yeah. It flattens you out pretty
It'll
much.
take the anxiety away, but it also takes away like the
Yeah.
magic of life.
Yeah. So Sterling, and it sounds like you have this interesting blend. And oftentimes I feel like surfers really are have an artist mentality. So it sounds like your
Yeah, for
house
sure.
had a creativity and a sort of competitiveness. Your sister's an actress, and it seems like that was encouraged. So, it's funny getting ready to talk to you today. I heard you say something that felt really important. So prior to 2019, you're sort of You were already married though before 2019, right? And
Yeah, I
and
just
how
had a
old's your
child.
son, right? Okay,
My son's
Wyatt.
8. Yeah, Wyatt.
Yeah.
He
So
was 3 then.
yeah, so you're like you're being a grown up.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because something that you have gone through that I get the sense of the only reason you're willing to share it is also because maybe it will help someone else, but it's like, hey, just in case everybody wasn't sure what I was going through, let me explain it to you. But in 2019, you hit your head, your fin and your board. But what I thought was so interesting is it's like you don't want to talk about it because it's hard to talk about it, but yet maybe
Mhm.
it's therapeutic and maybe it's something that can help somebody else. But I thought that was kind of a really interesting envelope for you to live in right now, where you've just spent and are still in it, the last several years healing. So maybe you could just share. You go out surfing one day, you hit your head, you have a couple inch cut, it heals up, and
Yeah.
you don't think anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think people don't talk about brain injuries because it's just too hard to go back and talk about. And I think if I would have just known, if I would have just heard someone talk about brain injuries, I would have not had to go down one of the hardest roads a human could go down, just with a little bit of awareness. Like, because I got the concussion and it wasn't that bad, but not taking the proper protocol is what made it so much worse. And I forgot about getting hit in the head. And so a couple months go by and I'm like, why am I having anxiety again like I was a kid? I was like, oh, great, not this again, like, and I started having weird anxiety and my legs were acting weird. And then COVID hit. So then I'm like, do I have COVID? Like, what is going on? Which I think COVID made it worse too, because I got COVID a handful of times, and which is bad for, the brain. So me already having a brain injury, not knowing it, when I got COVID, it was the most bizarre. Like, thank God I got into like meditation, and I was doing like ice baths before this injury. I was training for the unknown for some reason. I feel like my soul and spirit knew what was ahead of me. And I was training so hard for no reason. I didn't know why, but I was just I was like layered like all day running in the dunes like it's like, what am I training for? But I got to do it. And then when my brain started getting really bad, I started losing the ability of, I was becoming one of those people where like, why are they walking around all day? Or, like I was getting these weird side effects. Like I couldn't stop walking. I remember it was like I was in a coma, but awake. And months would go by and I'd be like, dude, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I acting this way? And my family was kind of like, I'm already a character. So they're like, oh, is Sterling just being, like Sterling? So, but really I was losing my sense of self. And then my legs stopped working. And that's when I was like, okay, something's wrong with me. So then they took me to a doctor and he was like, he's depressed. And I'm like, depression can stop your feet from working? He's like, yeah, like maybe, I don't know. And they just gave me Xanax again. So then I'm like, what? Like, how am I here again? Like, I already worked so hard, on myself and health. Because I was so healthy. Like, I didn't eat anything processed. Like, so I was just tripping out. And then I'm back on Xanax and I'm like, how am I here? It makes no sense. And I didn't have anyone around me guide me. So it just kept getting worse, and then I started becoming suicidal because I couldn't get out of bed. No one believes me. The doctor's saying he's just depressed. So like my family was just over it. They're like, nothing's wrong with you. The doctor says nothing's wrong with you. This is just in your head. So it was rock bottom, was crazy.
So Sterling, when you have listen, it's hard. It's beautiful, but being in a family, you have a wife, Amanda, you have your son, but it still like takes kind of all we got to make it happen. I think these relationships, that's why they are magical, because they take a lot of energy and they're important, but it's a daily dance and finesse. How did your family, because I thought about that. I was like, what did Amanda do to keep it together? Because, you're going through this. It does feel, it's like when people talk about, chronic fatigue, it's sort of this invisible thing. Is it real? Yeah. Isn't it?
Yeah.
And it hasn't been diagnosed yet. What's happening that allowed, though, everyone for it to stay together?
Well, it didn't. It felt like it drowned both of us, and it felt like COVID was really hard on everyone psychologically, and I felt like it crushed her. Just COVID, like us not being able to go anywhere, and like, are we all gonna die? And then I'm over. I can't get out of bed. Yeah. And I felt like she went into a dark depression too, where she wasn't getting out of bed. And I'm like, I can't walk. And then you're not getting out of bed. Like, how are we going to survive this, Yeah. So it was a really dark period for everyone. It was just, and it kind of freaked me out because, the man of the house is kind of like captain of the ship. And I'm going down and everyone's going down. So I finally got to a place where I'm like, I've got to figure this out. And how do you figure something out when your mind is everywhere? So I went back to like the cold plunge stuff and my meditation and like observing the mind. And it's like, okay, I need to get to like a different doctor. So I I found a therapist who was holistic, and his name's Michael De Maria, and he was the catalyst for me finally getting help because I'm telling him what I'm going through. He's like, this makes no sense. Like, what? He's like, something's wrong. So he got me to this doctor, Dr. Shark, who's a Chinese medicine doctor.
Did you say shark?
Dr. Shark.
Yes.
Ironic enough.
And how long is this after? First of all, how long is it after have you been dealing with the symptoms, and how long is it since you've hit your head?
It's been like a year and a half.
Holy cow.
So I'm suicidal. Like, I'm just trying to survive. Like, I'm in survival mode. And it's weird being in survival mode around a happy neighborhood of friends and family, and people are just walking by you like, what's wrong with him? Like, it was just bizarre. Like, like if I would have just had one doctor tell everyone, oh, he has a brain injury, everyone would have been like, oh, let's help him. But because that one doctor that people respected said I had depression, it was like I got zero help. And then I found the Chinese medicine doctor, and he's like, instantly, he's like, you have a brain injury for sure. I've worked with someone like you. They didn't know, like, you have a brain injury. And I started taking supplements and stuff, and I was getting better instantly.
What supplements were they specifically like brain, like omega or something? What things were there that you started taking?
Fish oil was like the first big thing, like probiotics, and all like a lion's mane mushroom, L-theanine, just a ton of like neuro supplements. I don't have them all with me right
Yeah.
now, but
And were you still vegetarian at this time?
well, that's an interesting part of the journey because I was a vegan for a bit.
Oh.
And when I went to the Chinese medicine doctor, he was like, hey, I'm not trying to like offend you or anything, but people who are vegan, they get brain injuries way easier. And I was like, whoa, really? And he's like, I actually have a vegan protocol to help people because it happens so often. And that kind of blew my mind. I was like, damn, like I thought I was being so healthy, but actually that was one of the main causes of my brain injury, not getting my brain nice and strong, taking those hits from surfing all the time. And that's that. Then I started eating steak, and the first steak I had, it was like heaven went into my brain. It was like liquid heaven in my brain. And I was like, oh my God, like relief for the first time in years when I ate that steak. And then I started eating a steak every night, and I was like, whoa, I'm coming back to life. Like, this is crazy. I could feel my brain opening up again. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think we need to eat meat.
Do you think if, let's say, just looking back now, because there's people for many reasons that practice being vegan or vegetarian, do you think at least if they supplemented, they even have an algae formed omega, you don't have to do, animal. Do you think that at least that kind of stuff would be a supportive practice for people like that? Is there anything insight you have besides meat that would be supportive of their brains?
I think you could. It also depends on your how good your gut brain is. Yeah. So if you have a good gut, I think you could be vegan but you have to be on the supplements. Like you need to be taking creatine. You need to be crushing everything, the omegas, like to make sure the brain is solid. Because I've felt it. I know what it feels like to have a brain that's falling apart, and then feeling it come back to life with supplements and eating meat again. I think you need like a team of people to be vegan, properly, especially if you're an athlete.
Yeah, I think guys, for anyone listening, I think people like there's a guy named Simon Hill, even Darren O'Lean, but they put together. I think they can put together protocols. But I think you're right. It's just about paying a little more attention. I'd love to know, when you say a brain coming back online, is it the emotion? Is it at the emotional part first, or is it the ability to concentrate? Like, what sort of leaves first, and what do you notice? You go, oh, is it kind of the emotional perspective gets back intact?
Well, so my next step of the journey, I did TMS, where they hook the big brain thing. Mm-hmm. And when they scanned my brain, they said, your brain is like sleep. It's like you're awake sleeping. Mm. So what my brain was showing was, I might be saying the wrong waves, but I was in alpha wave, I think. I was in the sleep wave, awake. Mm. And they're like, that's why you can barely walk and like move, because your brain is like sleeping right now. And I was like, yeah, that's what it feels like. And my journey was so crazy because it was like I was in the dream realm awake. So I was dealing with pretty crazy hallucinations constantly. So throughout the day, I had to deal with the hallucinations. Because I had that meditation practice going in, I was able to separate what was reality and what was like my imagination and the hallucinations and stuff. But the brain is so crazy. It felt like the movie Scrooge, where he goes back into his life and the angel shows him everything he did wrong. That's what my life was like. It was like I kept seeing my dad a lot, because my dad passed away in 2011. And I I didn't deal with that trauma good. I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't know how to heal from that. So that was, my dad was constantly like showing up and telling me things. And
What kind of, wait, come on, Sterling, what kind of things was your dad telling you?
He was almost like showing me where I hurt people and where people hurt me. And it was so intense. I was always crying, and I was like, why is this so great? It's like I took ayahuasca for 4 years. It's like I took ayahuasca and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this for 4 years. And having a spiritual journey was the only thing that was keeping me going. Because if I didn't have that, it would have just crushed me. So I was constantly looking for the lessons and finding the lessons and then breaking through. But I realized, working with the doctors and stuff, our right frontal lobe is where all the emotions. And Dr. Doug, who did the TMS, he's like, you're working with your emotional part of your brain in like the most intense way, like almost visual. So he was helping me with a therapist. It was crazy. It was like I was on ayahuasca and dealing with all of my traumas I never dealt with.
Because your dad died pretty young, right?
He died when I was 22, and he died of a heart attack, and it was just so traumatizing.
Yeah.
That felt like the first whack in my trauma journey. And what's interesting, what I learned in the brain clinics, you can get a brain injury just from trauma. Like there was this lady in the brain clinic. She had a brain injury just from her house burning down and her like animals dying. And that's what kind of really blew my mind. And I was like, wow, like, dude, our brains are so sensitive.
Yeah.
Like, it really now I just have a really big heart for people because I know like any little trauma can totally make someone depressed. And it's just like, it just feels like you can't go forward. And there's not much awareness for us to get through these kind of things. It's like everyone just says, just work, just be busy, like just keep going. Like it's like sometimes you have to go backwards to go forwards. You can't. That's where I messed up with the trauma of my dad. I just tried to busy myself out of it, and it boomeranged heavily.
Well, I'd almost imagine too, it had an amplification with your type of personality where, because you are funny, sometimes it's like a clown's tears where maybe people it's not that they don't take it as serious, but the way it's presented. So they're like, oh, he's okay. He's fine. So let's say you today versus you prior to this, if something goes down, if something's hard, if something were to happen, what do you think you would do today as a way to deal with it and try to go through it and sort of come out of it okay? What practice would you have in place that you've gotten because of this experience?
Well, I learned to slow down and learn to grieve things and learn to go into the sadness for a little bit, because it's like it's there for a reason. Like crying is good for you as long as you are like on the path of I'm going to be better, but I need to kind of go in this. Like I go to a lot of therapy and figuring out my PTSD, I realize, oh, like something about talking about this stuff is healing. And someone caring for you while you're telling them is so powerful. And I really learned like the power. We can't make it through this life without each other. And what was crazy is like no one wanted to slow down for me because everyone's on this like train to nowhere, train to success, to emptiness. And I had luckily like a few people that slowed down for me, like my friend Marshall Alberga. When I went to Hawaii finally, he would like, because I couldn't surf anymore. And he was my friend from Florida and he moved to Hawaii. And he would put me on his back and walk me to the water and put me on a surfboard and pull me out. And when a wave would come, it would turn my brain on. So all of a sudden I could stand up and I'm like, whoa. And like my brain opened up. So it was so crazy. The thing that injured me also healed me. Surfing healed me too. But the connection me and Marshall had was insane because it was like he's helping me and he's getting like the good stuff of like life and love. And then me accepting the help was giving me that magicalness. And we had like the best summer ever. Like just because we were just, he was just helping me and I was accepting it. And it was like one of the funnest times of my life. It was like the closest you'll feel to God, whatever God is for you. It really like, I'm like, this is like better than anything we've done. Like, why is this so fun? And it's like taking care of each other is the magic of life. And it really opened up my mind and the doors to like my happiness. You just posted this on your Instagram. Is like your happiness is more if you're making others happy.
Yeah.
And I realized my comedy is my gift. And that's my yoga, you know, like making people laugh and like not take things so seriously. Like that's my magic. And I never even knew that was my healing, you know, too. That was like being funny is also my healing and to help others.
And I know you were reluctant, but Are You Serious is a documentary that they did about you, and it's a story. Is it just on Stab, or where else can people see it?
It's just on Stab.
Okay, so it's funny because I can say this, you know, Stab, they can be pretty tough sometimes, but I feel like they have a new regime over there that's trying to do other work as well. Right. For people listening, Stab is a kind of a surf publication, and like, you know, you have fun about Laird. They used to really go for Laird pretty good.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh God. And you know, it's funny, being his wife, I would sort of get offended for a second, but then I'd realize Laird never saw it. And I thought, oh, that's okay. But they really have done a lot of others. It has really changed. So if anyone, how
do you feel like it was ill will?
Well, it was just more teenage, like fake punk rock. And now it feels like they still take the piss out of it, but they're having fun, you know? But so who approached you to do, Are You Serious? And I love the title because you said this in a way, nobody took you serious. They just sort of thought you were falling apart in a corner over there. And it was like, nothing's wrong with you. I mean,
people really want me to be like the Jim Carrey. They were hoping this was a joke and I'm playing. And I feel like
the wrestling,
people are kind of twisted.
Who was it? Andy Kaufman?
Andy. They were hoping I was like doing an Andy Kaufman.
Yeah.
And I didn't really care what people thought. I just wanted the people that were in my life to care. Yeah. And to me, that was the hardest part. Like, like some of the hardest parts as I'm getting better is like forgiving people. Cause it's like, man, you know, I was dying for like 5 years and I see people surfing or whatever. And they're just like, oh, hey. I'm like, geez, dude, like I thought you cared more about me than like a surf report.
How do you do it as like, hey, they didn't know, it's their limitation? Is it like, how do you go about, because I think we have to do versions of that. That's what life is, right? It's knowing that we're imperfect and others are imperfect. How have you found the way, I would imagine, especially the people close to you, to find that forgiveness, or have you?
Well, yeah, I'm working on it. Forgiveness is weird because you can say it, but how does it really come out? Like it kind of feels like a higher power is necessary to really let it happen. Like I love like in Hawaiian culture, like Ho'oponopono, I think is how
Yeah,
you say it.
Ho'oponopono, to make it right. Well,
Yeah,
it's also to make, it's kind
yeah.
of to make it right, isn't it? A little.
I mean, it's a lot of just saying like, I'm sorry, I forgive you, forgive me. It's like a
Yes.
mantra, kind of. And yeah, Hawaiian culture, when I was there, it was exactly what I needed. There's a magic to the islands, and there's a healing.
What do you think it brought you?
Well, I was in Hawaii when my dad passed away, and he was in California. And so I had a bit of a trauma with going back to Hawaii. Like I would go back, but it was hard because this is where the trauma happened. But when I was when I did the TMS treatment and then I went to Hawaii to relax, it was like it was one of the more magical times in my life because it felt, I was so sensitive. It felt like I could feel what the ancient Hawaiians would talk about and sing about. I was like, I would hear songs that no one could hear. Like these most beautiful songs. I would sit on the beach and listen to these songs, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this brother is like playing for me right now. Like it was amazing. And like the sea turtle always came and said hi to me at sunset, and I always felt like that was my dad, like coming to say what up. And I felt like it was this huge shift in my life of like, I'd gone through like 10 years of heartache, and I felt like that was the shift, like the spiritual shift in my life of healing. Like it was like I could finally like let go of this mental anguish that I was carrying around for so long.
I know you're still in the. Oh, and by the way, I was thinking about the sorry. The just so we're on it. The Ho'oponopono prayer is like you said. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. But it's funny.
Yeah.
Laird has and Laird and I talk about this a lot. It's sort of like you have these friendships, and maybe you have friends that like they're even kind of rough around the edges, but if you have to go into a foxhole with them, they're solid. And then you have people that are like, oh, it's cool, every easy, but like, man, the stuff goes down and they freak out or they're gone, right? and it's one thing for me, I have my own version of that, but for Laird, because of the nature of like what he does, it's like the guy who's going to come get you, the guy who's not going to come get you, right? Pretty much. It's so straightforward. So I'm wondering, because we talk about forgiveness, and then sometimes you go, hey, I'm in these relationships, but in the end, if it's like when the shit happens, if you can't figure out a way to be there, does it just make it more clear for you? Like maybe it's about forgiveness, but it's also like, oh, it's pretty clear who kind of can handle and maybe who can't.
I feel like you have layers of people around you. And it taught me like, okay, these are my core people, and treat them like gold. Like treat them way above yourself, because like now that I know how gnarly life is and how quick the rug can get pulled, like you make sure your people are in order. Like that's one thing I've learned. It's like you need the solid people, good, and then know who's like just kind of, face value type people. And like, yeah, just you can't hate everyone. And that's a dangerous road too. That's another dangerous path that I've gone down. It's like, like resentment is another block. Even though it's the reality, sometimes the reality is harsh, but it doesn't mean, hating them isn't gonna, it's just gonna block the good stuff for you.
Yeah. I know you're actually still healing and recovering,
Yeah.
but in what ways, besides maybe this perspective that you just shared, are you better than you were before this happened?
Well, physically, I couldn't lift over 10 pounds for 5 years. And then now I leg press yesterday in the gym 200 pounds. So that's a pretty big. Dude, lifting weights, I've never been into it, but there is something magical to lifting weights. Like there's, especially with the brain, it turned on so much stuff for me where I'm like, geez, I should have been in the freaking gym more when I was younger. Like it really turned, like it not only turned my body on, but I really struggled with walking till about 6 months ago when I started doing the gym. And that's what really turned my feet back on, the gym. So I made fun of gym people my whole life, and now I'm in there like freaking why? But mentally, I can feel happiness again, and I couldn't feel that for a while, and that was really hard. I couldn't feel that was the hardest part. Like when you're in so much pain, because like neuro pain is so much different than like twisting your ankle. It's like this undescribable burning sensation if your brain, with all the if your nervous system gets injured, it is tricky. It's something no one talks about because no one understands the nervous system really. So when you start talking to doctors, they're just kind of guessing.
Yeah.
Like everyone's, especially brain injuries, like that's what was really hard too. Like any other injury, they can give you like, okay, here's what to do and you'll be better in 6 months. Like the brain, they're just like, oh, maybe, like just depend. Everyone's different.
Were you adding, I know, they talk about if you have a brain injury, the number one thing you can do is relax, right? Like low stimuli, just low
Absolutely.
light, not screens, just literally chill out.
Yes. Yes.
But are you doing hyperbaric, or do you have other things in a protocol that
Try
are,
to.
if you're throwing darts on the wall that seem to be helpful?
Well, everyone is different. I know a lot of brain injured people, and we're kind of in this like group of healing brain injured people, and and it's all athletes. It's like people I met in the brain clinics, and hyperbaric will work insane for someone, and then it will tear someone up, and then acupuncture worked insane for them, and it'll almost kill you, and it's like okay, like so. Basically, I've just tried everything, and when something works, I add it to my resume. Like what really helped me was this supplement, Brain Rescue 3. That really helped me like turn a corner. And I also, my body was messed up. The doctors thought I had diabetes, but it wouldn't show up on the tests. But all my like problems were exactly like someone with diabetes, like low blood sugar, like feel like you're gonna die with the blood sugar stuff. And I couldn't figure it out. And I had to eat every 3 hours, like a full course meal, so I wouldn't feel like I'm dying. And it was brutal. I gained so much weight. I gained like 50 pounds. And I had to eat so much all day just to be able to sleep at night. And I started drinking fulvic and humic minerals, or do you know what it's called?
Yeah, like the fulvic acids?
Yeah, there's two of them. There's like Beam Minerals was one, and then Blackwater or BLK water.
Yep, Blackwater.
Have you heard of
Yeah.
that? When I started taking that stuff, I had toxicity issue. So whatever got messed in my brain, I was just storing toxins in my fat. So I couldn't lose the weight. I was trying to diet, but I couldn't lose because my fat wouldn't let go of the toxins.
Yep.
And if it did, it would go to my brain and I would feel like I'm dying. So that's why I was eating every 3 hours. So I wouldn't burn fat, because as soon as I started burning the fat, that's all the toxins would go straight into my brain. And it was the craziest ride. So the fulvic and humic acid
Yeah, they're minerals, right? The Blackwater has minerals, right? I think.
Yeah, it's like fulvic minerals and
So
stuff.
have you found a balance with that right now? Are you hitting a stride where you kind of are getting into creating your own system?
Yeah, I mean, I have to live like an NBA basketball player to make to make my brain work just right. I actually like gained a lot of inspiration from LeBron James, because I was watching this thing how he can't be successful on the court if, like, from the moment he wakes up he's not crushing everything, because he won't stick to it on the court. And I was like, okay, like I got to crush from the second I get up to falling asleep. I have to like really be on this. And when I started doing that, I started healing like immensely. And like, so when I wake up, I go on a long walk. I do a long walk and I have a flute that I play.
Yeah, I've seen your flute, Sterling.
I play the flute in the park, and like people think I'm crazy, but I'm actually like healing and happy. But
is there is music that has certain frequencies and vibrations? Like, what's his name? Jonathan Goldsmith. He has like a holy harmony. Have you ever heard that?
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah. That whistle.
It's a 60-minute song that actually Laird will play it in our house. This is how we stay married. Okay, Sterling, I'm telling you, you can use this on next time against us.
Really?
Yeah, it's called Holy Harmony, and it just plays in my house, and it's a pretty repetitive pattern, but they talk about frequency and vibration for healing and cellular healing. Okay, so your flute is definitely doing that, and then what is it? What else does it look like?
So I crush my morning walk the dog, and I kind of I meditate under a tree. Trees have been super healing for me. Like, trees are magical crystal energies. Like, I throughout my entire journey, I could sit under a tree and like it would calm the nervous system down. So I do a lot of tree therapy, and then I'll take all my supplements after my walk, and then I'll go to the gym. I'll crush the gym, and then I do sauna, and then I'll go to the ocean. If the surf's up, I'll surf, and if it's not, I do like this thing called Zen swimming, where I started Zen swimming because I realized if you float long enough, it gives you the same feelings as a float tank.
It does.
So if you don't touch the floor and if you body surf, dude, it does magical stuff to your brain. And after, you're kind of like, whoa. You feel like Laird after Jaws or something.
Laird after Jaws was like good for 24 hours and then right back, and then just back at it. Like, there's no surf on the horizon. And there's also, and people don't realize this, if you do something very extreme, no matter what it is, there is a come down.
It's gnarly.
Well, so there's a sort of an up. Oh. So the first 24, 36 is fine. And then after, there's almost a PTSD because the output was so big, sure. Right? Yeah. And so if there's anyone, like maybe they ran a marathon or they're doing triathlons, that dip is completely natural. Or even like maybe a gnarly work project where you have to have so much output. People don't realize you can't do that without there being a downside.
Yeah, you'll get suicidal if you go high
Oh
enough.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that.
And that's the thing that people, I'm grateful Laird is pretty self-aware and he'd be in that
Yeah.
place. I mean, he used to drink alcohol. He doesn't for the last almost 17 years.
Mm. Oh,
Is
that's
it
nice.
alcohol off the table for you?
Like, I will only drink if I'm with people, social, and just like maybe one
Yep.
beer. But I have to be super careful. Like, that alcohol is a double-edged sword. Like, it can be good for social gatherings. I think it can't, like, it's just hard. It's a hard thing to use just right. So it's probably, if you have any kind of
Yeah.
addiction, like, probably best to stay away from
Yeah.
it. But I've never had issues with alcohol, but it runs in my family.
Yeah. Well, it's a depressant too. That's the thing people don't realize. Alcohol is a depressant. So is there anything that you saw, maybe if you went to somebody for TBI, that there's any kind of treatment that is super cutting edge that really seems to be helping a lot of people with these types of injuries?
Well, I think Kai Lenny just got a brain
I
injury.
know.
And I've been checking in with him. Like, I can tell he's kind of going through the phases of
Yeah.
it because it's just a weird freaking journey.
Yeah.
But it seems like he's got Sean guy who he's like the core lord of brain injuries.
Yeah.
Sean, I forget his last name. Do you know
I
what I'm talking
do.
about?
He's
Big wave server guy.
yeah. I don't know what his last name is. But he also has those Red Bull guys, they have that performance center. So I'd imagine they have some access. But I was just wondering, because I talk to sometimes some neuroscientists and we've done some brain testing where, you make your bird fly with your brain, like you do these games where it's almost like a video game, but you have to do everything with your brain. And actually
Right.
over concentrating doesn't make it do what you want. It's something else. So there's sort of some really interesting things for brain protocol that's interesting. And how
I think surfing's the best.
says
Like
says the surfer. Yeah.
It's nothing made my brain go more than surfing. Something about just being in the ocean, just it lets the brain go. And I did a lot. The best thing I feel like someone could do is you have to eat good. Stay away. Like, I really noticed like seed oils messed with me and sugar. Like, you have to eat good if you're going to get through this. Take lots of fish oil. And the supplement Brain Rescue 3 was just, any person I've given it to got them to take it. Like, my friend, his wife, she got into a bad car accident. And he's like, dude, she's suicidal. She's like trying to run out into traffic. I was like, dude, get that stuff. And he's like, dude, she's like almost 90% better now. And I'm like, I know, dude, if you eat the right food, take the right supplements, and just relax, like just chill, don't look at TVs and screens and phones, like, you'll heal.
If someone, because it's one thing to be the patient, and we've talked about that, and a lot of times, sometimes the people who are the support, and if it's sort of this unknown, or it's kind of, you don't really know how, what kind of invitation would you make to somebody who's there trying to support somebody? What is the best way, especially when you're in the process of trying to discover not only what's the problem, but what's the treatment?
Yeah. That's another part of the journey. It's like, it is just as hard taking care of a brain injured person than being the brain injured person, because one of the main side effects is anger. And if you get angry, people will not talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
And I learned I understand people now. Like, when I had my brain injury, I'd go sit by this tree, and homeless people, the only people that hung out with me were homeless people. Like, all my like rich friends would like walk by with their dogs. They're like, Sterling, he's doing drugs. Like, and people are also looking for you to fall. And that's what I
You think?
realized too. What's that?
You think so?
I think when you're a successful person,
Yeah.
like someone like me, like I've always been successful because my dad is Yancey, and like I was a pro server at age 9, and like I feel like people were like, cool, like Sterling's messed up now. Like like let him take this for a little bit. Or it was, but when I was under my tree, like homeless people would come up to me, and I always judged homeless people. I was like, oh, they did drugs, they made the wrong decisions, like it's their fault or whatever. When I get to know these people, I'm like, they're just like me. Yeah. This lady had trauma because she got blasted in war and she can't get her brain back. Yeah. And she's wandering around just like I am. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these are actually normal people that have been hurt. That's it. They're not, there's nothing different than them and you. They took drugs to cope because it's so hard to deal with a brain injury or whatever trauma they're dealing with. So it really opened my eyes. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've been judging people, you know, like it made me understand kind of humans in general. Yeah. Like
we're an inch from it all unraveling. We're scared, you know, when things are out of, you know, they're not in the template of like, this is how we do it. I think it gets us uncomfortable and scared. And I think you said something in the beginning of this conversation about whether it's something difficult or even this, like, oh, that makes me uncomfortable. Actually, I'm going to lean into that. I'm going to try to learn more about that, not be uncomfortable. So it brings me, I'd be remiss. You have Pinch My Salt, which is your podcast. And now your co-host that only goes by Cousin Ryan. Tell me how the two of you got together.
Well, Ryan has always been my best friend. We grew up together. He's actually my cousin. And,
he is your cousin for real? Okay.
Yeah.
He seems like a teddy bear.
Oh, he's the sweetest human ever. We've actually worked together kind of my whole career. Like we've made a bunch of surf movies together. And you know, the podcast was another big healing thing for me because it was so hard to do a podcast because it took a lot of thinking. And that's exactly what I needed to do because I've always been a bit of a chameleon in life, and humor is kind of the mask I put up to kind of calm people. Or like I always grew up like felt like I was the runt of the pack because like I was always the youngest traveling with like way older guys. So I had to use humor to like make sure no one beat me up or like. So with the podcast, it was like mental gymnastics with the podcast and humor. And I felt I almost got deeper into being funny because I had to think on how to get it out. Like before, it just naturally came. And when your brain is messed up and pathways are messed up, it's very bizarre because it's like, okay, I know how to say this, but why isn't it coming out? So to get pathways to change, it felt like I had to use like my willpower a little bit. Like, okay, I want to say this a certain way, but my brain can't do it. So how do I get it to do it? And I'd almost go into like this meditative state where it kind of shifted my brain to let the pathway open. So it was a big healing part of my journey too, like talking.
Yeah.
Because I had problems when I first got the brain injury. It's like my brain didn't know how to turn a corner. It's the most bizarre feeling. Like I'm like, oh, I want to go to the refrigerator, but okay, this pathway is messed up. I don't know how to turn. As crazy as that sounds. No. It was, and what happens, you just get frustrated. That's where the anger comes out with brain injury people. They're actually just trying to do stuff, and it's almost like becoming a child again. You know how children get really angry when something doesn't go right? It's the same thing with a brain injured person. So if you're taking care of a brain injured person, maybe pretend they're a baby again. Like pretend they're a toddler and they're just learning. Like try to forget they're like a 40-year-old human. Like have empathy for them. But you can't have empathy if you don't understand them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem with the awareness of this injury. All these people are coming home from war messed up, and there's no actual help for them. And they just get thrown drugs.
Yeah.
And then they're homeless. And then people are like,
yeah,
you shouldn't have taken drugs. Like, it's your fault. It's like, no. Like, this can happen to you. You're one car accident. You're one simple accident away from being just like these people.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing too, is the notion of giving someone the space you would a tired and hungry kid, where it's like, don't take it personal. Just see if you can figure out the language that they have right now to get what they need and want. Mm. And is there, a sort of a baseline, if your general, let's say your family doctor wouldn't be able to figure it out, is there a way if someone is suspicious that they might be going through something like this, do you have a sense of the best type of doctor that they could go to?
That's another tricky part of the journey. Mm-hmm. Like, I found, one cool thing about surfing is we had a lot of guys that have gone through it. Like the Sean guy, Shane Doran would call me and be like, hey, are you okay? Like, Ra Machado helped me. He's like, hey, there's a brain clinic out here. And so what made my journey so hard is I didn't know what I had for so long. And then once I started putting it out there, I had a brain injury, then Shano and guys would be like, oh, it's called Wave Neuro in San Diego. Mm-hmm. And that was a big help. But the problem with brain injury, there's not one thing that's going to heal you. It's a long journey. It's a 5-year journey minimum. And that's what's gnarly about it. I know
you're getting better and better, but when it gets when you're tired or frustrated, where do you get the strength or the motivation to be like, this might be I still have a ways to go? How do you keep enduring it? Is it the improvement, or what keeps you on that?
That was one of the most beautiful parts of my journey. I remember my legs didn't work. I would crawl to my van and drive down to the park and crawl to this tree and sit. And I remember just being like, God, how do I make it? No one's giving me answers. What am I doing? I'm crawling everywhere. What is wrong with me? No one will tell me. And that's where it's I feel like every person has their own biblical journey, their own spiritual journey. And I actually was there. This is my chapter where okay, Sterling, what are you actually made of? You can go kill yourself, or you can fight to live. And how do you fight to live? And fighting to live when you can barely move is hard, and it teaches you patience. And it teaches you I need others to help me, and I have to weather the storm within my mind. I have to weather these huge emotions. I have to now that I'm getting better, I realize suffering is the biggest blessing in life you can have, if you can embrace it, if you can find the lessons in it. Because it will teach you more than any drug, any ayahuasca you can take. It's the real deal. It will really show you how to become you. And now that I'm getting better, I'm kind of walking around kind of gnarly, what like I'm kind of feeling lairdish. Like, what? I feel like, holy crap, like I'm kind of gnarly to get through that. And it's given me this confidence where, I watch, like maybe my older self like crumble into anxiety in a second. And it's like, now it's like, I've been through my valley of the shadow, like, I don't know, like, I can handle this now, or like, I can have confidence within myself to just keep going. Like, I feel like our generation, like maybe more so my generation and my son's generation, like everything's just so easy, and it's like,
it's just a different,
it hinders
it's just a
us.
different setup, right? Like everything's a swipe or a phone thing away. And, this is an interesting kind of come to Jesus for my group, where it's so easy to be like, oh, they have it easy, so it's like that. It's like, no, it's just the way that the world is different. And so in what ways should we compensate the other direction so that we don't, get caught being, I don't want to say too soft because that's unfair, but just being aware of the things that don't actually serve us.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a curse kind of when things are so easy. Like,
Yeah, but I think listen, I agree, but taking it this step further, it's sort of like, why would you bother to exercise or implement sort of food restrictions? It's simply just trying to get a relationship with knowing what's better for us in the long run. And that's hard for any human to do, because then simultaneously, biologically, we're set up to find the easiest way possible. Yeah. So we live in this constantly. I need to do this to feel happy and to sleep well and to be strong, but my biology is also set up to get as much, food and calories and easy stuff as I can. So I think it's, once we get that awareness and we feel the difference, I think we can create a system. I just want to bring up one thing that was also sort of ironic. When this happened to you and it was COVID, you said that also your bridge broke and you couldn't even get to the beach.
Oh my gosh. It was just so, when it rains, it pours.
I mean,
yeah. So a hurricane knocked our bridge down, and it's an island out there where the beach is. So I'm like, great. Like, my one healing world is gone. And I kept getting worse. And I would sit by this little river, this bayou near my house, but it's like so polluted you can't get in it. It was the lowest of lows. I'd sit by this dirty river, like, I was just always searching for some kind of nature has so much healing in it. You can find pockets. And when I was so sensitive, I could find these pockets. It was definitely my time to like go in the deepest.
Are you in your mind now knowing I'm going to be, the trajectory of the rest of my life will actually be better because of this?
Absolutely. Like, it's weird to say, but this is kind of the biggest blessing of my life as I get better. And it's crazy to hear those words come out of my mouth because it was so ridiculously hard. But the appreciation you get is just priceless. Like, I never appreciated air. Now I just naturally like, it's just so good to breathe. Like, when you're in neuro pain for so long and you're burning, and like when I'm in the park and I'm playing my flute, I'm just like thank you, God. Like, I learned, I'll stay here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just great. Being grateful is a superpower. Like, if you can learn to be grateful, it's like all of a sudden it's a whole new universe you live in, like a whole new magical universe. But it's lame. We have to like get totally crushed to get to that place.
Yeah.
Like, because I realized like I had a magical freaking life, but I didn't know it because that's all I knew. Like, I only know like 10-foot 360 airs. Like, this is all I know, so I don't even care. Now it's like my body, if I could just get into the air, I'm like, whoa, this is great. Yeah. Like, I'm so grateful. Like, I'm definitely not surfing as good, but like, I'm loving it more and I don't care. Like, I would rather love surfing 100 times less than being 100 times better and not loving it. Like, just being able to smell the ocean and feel the air and like we're just, it's pretty crazy like how magical life can be and how terrible you can make it.
That's
just by your awareness, just by like what you're dwelling on or thinking about. Like, it took so much evolution to get us like standing and looking out of our eyeballs, and we're like, it's just kind of cloudy, or like we'll find a thing to complain about how much it took to just get us here. Like, if you can like start at the beginning of time where it just got to you and be like, whoa, I'm present. Like, this is like, you'll be grateful. You'll be appreciative instead of being like, oh, my career isn't actually blossoming as I wish. Or
well, and I think it's interesting. People don't realize that I don't think it's a natural occurrence, that there is a form. It's like why people have a meditation practice or they do certain things, because in a way it's a discipline to have that gratitude like everything else. I think gratitude and appreciation becomes these emotions that we think are something that float and then they hit us, versus also having these practices in place that allow us to focus on the good stuff. When you do, excuse me, when you do Pinch My Salt, because you guys do you shoot once a week, or how often do you guys shoot?
Yeah, once a week. Once a week.
Is there pressure to be funny? Because the show is funny and
Thank you.
You guys have a lot of fun and bring joy. It's not mean spirited. It is funny.
We love Laird.
I'll tell people there's one skit I do think is really funny. You put up this thing of my new diet. I did think it was funny. It was sort of this blonde middle-aged lady, and she was sniffing chocolate bars and eating broccoli. Yeah, and he's like, Gabby has a new diet. Yeah, and it looks like this crazy lady sniffing on a giant chocolate bar. I thought that was really great. But when you're getting ready to do that, because being funny is one of the hardest things there is. And even if you're naturally funny, it's not easy. Is it just flow through you, or do you guys, what's the kind of the prep with you and cousin Ryan prior, or do you just roll? Like, how do you do it?
There is a kind of a meditative space we got to kind of get into. And, yeah, it's like we need the right amount of caffeine and the right amount of like Zen before to where it's like you kind of plant all the seeds to hope when you press record, it crushes at that same time. And me and Ryan's relationship, just knowing each other for so long, like we've been doing this. Like, we always made movies, and I realize now, I'm like, dude, we were funnier. Like, we should have just filmed ourselves talking this whole time. Like, we're somehow funnier, just you and me talking. And it always felt that way for me. Like, I think a lot of the success is when you just enjoy doing something. And like, I really cherish my time with him because we're both dads. Yeah. We both have kids. You know, you don't really get to do anything fun. So I get stoked to just have some fun with him. And when it's flowing out of the right place, it just really hits. Like, if I was trying to be like, oh, I want to be like the #1 comedian, like, it won't flow right. Like, it won't be organic. Yeah. And I think that's what people feel, the organicness. Yeah. Like, we're just kind of tapping into that place.
Well, and it is very playful. Like, there's a playfulness that I think this is something I hope because I'm pretty serious minded overall, but the thing I'm trying that I feel so important to maintain is certain people, when you look in their eyes, it doesn't matter if they're 80, they still have preserved a little bit of the kid,
Yeah.
and the playfulness. So, Sterling, you have Are You Serious? Your documentary. It's on Stab. Every week it's Pinch My Salt. And is Kelly Slater, is he back? Is he your friend again?
Dude, I've been working on Kelly for so long. Like, he's one day gonna tell me he loves me, but we're just not there yet.
Hey,
he hasn't found the magic in making fun of yourself yet.
he's a stone cold killer. I always laugh because, Laird has the reputation of being kind of the one. And I'm like, no, the killer is Kelly. The lover is Laird.
I know everyone always messages me. They're like, dude, does Laird does he hate you? I'm like, dude, Laird's actually like super cool. Like him and Gabby, like they don't take themselves seriously. And people are like, whoa, that's so awesome. And they're like, what about Kelly? I was like,
we'll get there. Hey, he's getting ready to have another kid. He'll get over the white wetsuit trip. He'll be good.
I know. Kids are so good for you. Like
they beat your ass,
Yeah, they crush you. They don't care about who you are.
Are you kidding? I have my youngest is at home and she's a junior and she talks to Laird in a way. And sometimes every once in a while I'll get distance and she'll be like, okay, my friends Dad, don't come around here, or whatever. Just, it's so cute. It's so important that is the dynamic in your house,
I know when you have a kid, all your dreams, you're like, oh, they're going to be exactly like me and they're going to love everything I love. And then you have them and they're like, wait, you're my biggest critic. What's going on? Like, you don't want to do anything I like.
Right.
Like they're totally like your guru. And it's so nice because what I loved about having a kid is like you stop caring so much about yourself and you realize how much easier life is when you care about everything but you. Like, what about what I want? It's a really fun, weird journey.
Yeah.
At first, it was kind of hard when I first had a kid.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I can't do whatever I want 24/7. But then you realize it's like the best thing ever.
Yeah. We call it the true surrender. Sterling, given all that you've gone through, and as we wrap this up, I was wondering. Oh wait, are you wearing a helmet by any chance?
Oh yeah.
Okay, you do have that.
I have.
Right.
What's
you have
that?
that sort of. I feel like I saw a video of like a sort of a really looks comfortable. Does it mess with your proprioception or anything?
No, it's called a soft helmet, and it's impact foam.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually Tom Carroll's company.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And Tom's been super great to me. Like, I hit him up about the helmets, and I actually met up with him in Hawaii, and he taught me TM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was just a beautiful connection. Like, TC was so intense back in the day, so it's like now he's just so happy and like it's really cool. Yeah. He's been a great mentor for me.
Because you've had a very unique journey, if you had just a thought or if an invitation that you wanted to give to people, and not necessarily who've had a TBI or anything, just in life, given your unique path, what would that be?
Like if I could give a secret?
No, just an invitation. You could be a reminder. It could be like, hey, as somebody who's gone through this really showed up for me.
If you can laugh at yourself, you can make it through anything. Like, if you can not take yourself serious, like it's always been my secret sauce. Like, it's always as intense life could get. If I could still be laughing, it's like, if I can laugh through this, like, you can get through anything. Like, I was in the worst positions in life, and I would still kind of like break away from the seriousness and laugh. And I'm like, oh, like, even when it's the worst, you can still laugh, and like it's medicine.
Yeah, I have this image of you like getting out of a vehicle and crawling to whatever destination in the park. Is that for real? Like, is that?
Oh yeah. And it was, my body was so sensitive. A blade of grass felt like a knife in my back. A plane flying over me, I would hold my ears and I would start shaking, trying not to go into like I was always scared to go into when you shake really bad.
Oh, like a seizure. Yeah.
Yeah, I was having seizures at the beginning. So I was always so scared of going into that. And so I carry around this giant piece of foam and I would crawl with it to the tree and lay it down and like lay on it. And people would look at me and they're like, who's this freaking hippie that drove here in a Mercedes Sprinter van? They would see my van and then they would look at me because I couldn't shower. It hurt too bad. The water, getting into a tub, if the temperature was off 1 degree, it would burn my body. So I just stopped showering. I would just I stunk. I wore the same thing every day. So people, when they'd see me at this tree, they're just like, what is going on with this guy? And like COVID made everyone cold in their hearts. It felt like they're like, oh, I don't want to go near him because I don't want to get COVID. And it was just like, okay, like this is a weird world.
Yeah. Well, Sterling, I know that this is not an easy thing for you to talk about, but I feel like you're doing it also because maybe it would help somebody else or somebody who knows somebody. So I really appreciate you
Thanks for having me.
Talking about it. And I just can't wait to see what new way that you'll make fun of Laird and me on the fringe.
Thank you guys for being so cool about it.
Yeah, I mean, until we're not, and then Laird might show up in Florida. Who knows? You never know.
I can't wait to surf Jaws with Laird.
Laird's only foiling, Sterling.
Is he done surfing?
Well, what happened is, I'll tell you this really quickly. When he got into a thing with this guy Brett Lickle, it was very big at Sprecklesville, unforecasted, and Brett got injured, and Laird had to take his wetsuit off and tourniquet Brett's
I think I heard that
calf,
story,
and Laird's like naked coming up on the ski on the beach with Brett on the back. But what happened is Laird said the wave was maybe had a close to 100-foot face, and he said that the water coming up the wave is so at that size is too fast to get down on a conventional tow board. And so he goes, I know where the limit is, and that's why he jumped over to foiling full time.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
because
so he still foils the big waves.
Yeah. But because there's no drag, right? He can he can
get down.
They don't know where the limitation is yet. So that's why he jumped from one to the other. And then Piahi became
like a new
back to a paddle wave. So he sort of thought, okay, that's, it's just a different chapter. So that's why he only foils. So he'll either lay down foil, stand up paddle, foil smaller waves, and then tow foil big waves.
I haven't been able to catch on to it yet, but the waves aren't good here.
And you need actually long
swells.
They're doing stuff in some places that they're riding, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. So it's miles, right? It's different. It's different. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I want to get into that, like riding swells.
Yeah, open ocean. When you're ready, just reach out. I know somebody.
Where do y'all live in Hawaii?
We're in Kauai and Malibu. Yeah. So just reach out, and again,
thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me. Are you kidding? Thank you for sharing your story. I think, it's interesting when it does come from somebody who seems like ha 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 about everything, and you don't realize that they've gone through one of the darkest things that someone can go through. That I think it's a lot of people experience this for different reasons, right? Like something is wrong. I'm not myself. I don't know how to get back to that, and the journey to that. And
there's so many different ways, like autoimmune issues, or there's so I've learned so much. It's like, man, you can get sick in every different which way, and it's a journey. But you can figure it out.
You can. Sterling Spencer, I appreciate you. And if people want to get more of you, Pinch My Salt and your documentary, Are You Serious? And what's exciting too is I feel like I'm going to talk to you in a year and you'll be even further down the field. So it'll be interesting to see. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll be freaking at Jaws, foiling with Laird.
No, you'll be with Kelly.
Me and Kelly, he's going to finally accept me into his heart.
You're gonna have s'mores with Kelly. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you want to learn more, there is a ton of valuable information on my website. All you have to do is go to GabrielleReece.com or head to the episode show notes to find a full breakdown with helpful links to studies, research, books, podcasts, and so much more. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and send them to @GabbyReece on Instagram. And if you feel inspired, please subscribe. I'll see you next week.